Thanks again, everybody, for joining us. We are excited to welcome you to Local First webcast, Harnessing Opportunity in Durango, a Perspective on Development. My name is Emily Bell, and I'm the Managing Director at Local First. And we're excited for you to join us for what we hope will be an informative and inspiring hour with Joe Minicozzi as he shares his expertise, presents on the opportunity present in Durango's ongoing development, and contextualizes the importance of harnessing this growth for the health of residents and creating a circular economy, building resilience. So just some housekeeping notes. This Zoom event is in a meeting format, so feel free to keep your video on and connect or ask questions in the chat. I know Joe likes to be able to see folks, so if you're able to keep your camera on, that would be fun for all of us. Also, this event is being recorded. Our primary focus of the recording is to make sure we capture Joe and his presentation, so your likeness and your contributions in the chat will not be featured in the recording. And we also had heard from some folks that you had concerns about the registration process, so this is a learning opportunity for us too, and we will probably be using a different format in the future, but thanks for your patience and for being with us today. So throughout the presentation, you will be muted. So if you have a question for Joe, please send it via the chat feature. Our team will be monitoring that, and we'll have a Q&A at the end where he'll be able to answer those if he didn't already cover them in the presentation. So at this time, we would love to welcome you to introduce yourselves in the chat so that your fellow attendees know who you are if you wish. So go ahead and put your name and the name of your organization or business in the chat. Now, with that housekeeping out of the way, I'm excited to introduce Joe Minicozzi. Joe is an urban planner who's known for introducing new ways to think about and visualize land use, urban design, and economics. He founded his company, Urban 3, to explain and visualize market dynamics created by tax and land use policies. And Urban 3's work establishes new conversations between multiple professional sectors, policymakers, and the public to creatively address the challenges of urbanization. So we're really excited to have him here. And as some of you may know, he joined us back in 2016 to partner with several businesses and Local First to really analyze La Plata County's economic opportunity through a third-party assessment. So that report had a lot of really amazing data about the importance of tax revenue, and especially through the lens of our local independent business community. So we're excited to have him talk a little bit more about his previous work here and then address kind of some current topics. So, you know, just from the Local First perspective, as our community looks to the future and aims to address housing and business opportunity, we at Local First are seeking out a diverse range of perspectives in order to address these issues that our community is facing and the long-term impacts of our decisions. There's been a lot of discussion about the former 9R administration building, and we really wanted to bring in an outside perspective to talk about that, our historic redevelopment projects. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Joe so that we can hear.
Thanks, Emily. Can you all hear me okay? Give me a thumbs up. Good. Okay, let me share screen. So it's been a while. I reckon I see some familiar faces in the chat or in the Zoom panes. The whole world's kind of changed in the last 5 years. But I also want to thank the foundation of you all pulling this last study together that we did in 2005 or 14 or something. It's 2014 data. And I actually did do a little run through your community. This is me. I can't remember who took this picture. I don't know if it was Mary or Peter or Tim, but I was the opening act for the Rocky Horror Picture Show with my economic report on Durango. So Strater Hotel. But I'm going to ask everybody if they could put this in the chat. Let me get my chat open. I'm going to ask you all a quick little question. And this is not like a complex test, but if you could tell me, I'm going to give you 5 seconds to tell me. Some of you might remember I might have done this when I was in Durango before. If not, I know it's been a while, but if you could tell me how many shapes you see in this kids puzzle in 5 seconds, and just go ahead and put it in the chat. It won't take long to do. Let me get my timer going and ready to go. So tell me how many shapes you see in this kid's puzzle. And I'll go ahead and keep an eye on the chat here to see what we got going on. So Tim's coming out the gate strong with a 9. Anybody want to go above or below that? So we got a couple answers. Oh, 19. All right. All right. So does anybody want to tell me how many kids you saw on the school bus? Anyone? What time was it on the clock? So what you didn't see is data that was sitting right in front of your face. You didn't see that there were 5 kids on the bus. You didn't see that it was 10 after 10 or on the clock. You didn't see that because I didn't ask you that question, right? I just gave you a psychological test. Daniel Kahneman wrote about it in the book Thinking Fast and Slow, that we've got 2 ways that our brains think. We've got a fast way and we've got a slow way. I gave you a fast problem. I gave you a quick question. Your brain filtered off all that information. Your brain eliminated the clock, eliminated the school kids because you were only looking for shapes. What I find in city after city is that we go after questions with preconceived loaded ideals and we ignore everything else in front of us. When I heard about this kind of dilemma that you're in with the 9R project, then that was actually the fire department answering a question. They needed a new firehouse. So they went after and found that answer. And what you all are struggling with are all of the other data points that were filtered out. So I'm just putting this up front. This is the way that I see your dilemma that you're in, is that I think your challenge as a community is to take a step back and see all of the data that's on the table and an opportunity for Durango. I think you're in a good spot. So I just want to put that out there as a dilemma for you all. So, and again, you're not alone. Asheville, North Carolina is where I'm from. It's another mountain community up in the east side. Our mountains aren't as big as yours. Our mountain biking isn't as great as yours. Our beer's better, but I'm prejudiced there, but maybe a little biased. But it's a cool little town, bluegrass music. We've got 40 breweries in town, 40. That's 2,500 people per brewery, if you want to do the math on that. And like any quirky little mountain town, we have men dressed as nuns on tall bikes that eat fire. It's not your typical place. But we didn't start out this way. Our downtown cratered in the 1970s. This is our shots of our downtown. That's a 1996 Chevy Celebrity. And we effectively gave up on our city. As a community, there was a culture of folks here that just thought, we'll never be urban. We're rural mountain people. This isn't who we are. And I had the great good luck of working for this real estate development company called Public Interest Projects, which is a for-profit real estate development company. 75% of our money went into sticks and bricks and 25% went into seeding businesses, getting the ground floor active so that we could have a good downtown. So we're entrepreneurial focused. So my whole mindset was sort of honed in this business, in this company, and how I look at cities. But this is one of our buildings before and after. And for Peter, this is Malaprop's bookstore is in the ground floor of this. And we basically gave them an offer they couldn't refuse on rent to grow them up into that space. But it was mostly about getting apartments going upstairs. And what I saw with our company is that we're constantly having this sort of data fight with our community of getting people to understand what's going on with our downtown revitalization and why does it matter for the whole community. So how does data help inform community conversations? So if you could step back and look at land, land is all that you have. And you all have a better sense of that because of how rural your community is. You're pretty much an outpost in southwestern Colorado. So that land is sacred. So farmers always talk about economic terms, water per acre, labor per acre, all of that. So we should do the same with our buildings. So this is one of the buildings that we rehabbed. So the city did the streetscape project. Thank you, city, for the garbage can, the bike rack, 2 benches, and a street tree. That's awesome. We put in retail, office, and residential. So the taxable value of this property went from $300,000. It was sitting there in our portfolio, and it grew to $11 million. So that represents a 3,500% increase on an asset that's already sitting there. So do you have a 401k plan that grows by 3,500%? I mean, isn't that awesome? This is building community wealth. But again, we always get these biases from people, the way that they see questions. So here locally, people, would say to me, they're like, well, Joe, that's cute and everything. We've got this Walmart at $20 million. It's like, all right, fair enough. It took 34 acres of my corporation in my city to make that Walmart happen. It only took 2/10 of an acre to make our building happen. So that's not a fair way of looking at it. So per acre, we're producing 100 times more property taxes, double the retail taxes. Who would have thought that a furniture store, a tattoo shop, and a beauty salon is double the productivity of a Walmart? But it is. A lot more residents per acre and more jobs. So this is a thesis of how we operate, is just an apples to apples understanding of analyzing things. I want you to understand this isn't scary math that I'm doing here. This is basic economic productivity. Let's put it a different way. If I were to ask you, which car has the most miles per tank, we should all be driving Ford F-150s, right? They make the most miles per tank. You understand how silly that sounds, because we all know that tanks are different sizes. That's not how you measure efficiency. You say miles per gallon, and the numbers change, and we should all be driving BMW Acetas. So that's all we're doing with economics, is looking at things in an apples to apples way, and to really understand what you're trying to get after from an economic standpoint, which is efficiency and productivity. So taking this and applying it to city economics is critically important. I find that people tend to have economic misnomers, or maybe tropes that they use. And it's just like, well, let's just step back out of this for a second and realize, what is a city? A city is basically that finite boundary of land. Your city can annex land, but you also understand the consequences of water once you start stretching out. But La Plata County, they can't annex the next county over, so that land is fixed. So your city is a boundary, your county is a boundary. And also, if you look up the word incorporate in the Oxford American Dictionary, it says to constitute a company, a city, or other organization as a legal corporation. Note that city and business are in that same line. So your city is incorporated. Your city council is a board of directors for a, hundreds of billion-dollar corporation. Your county is incorporated. Your state of Colorado is incorporated. And guess what? Our country is incorporated. Joe Biden said this on the Stephen Colbert Show in 2016. The United States is the largest corporation in the world. And I'm such a nerd, I looked it up. And at the bottom of the slide down here is the actual US code that lists us as a federal corporation. So this is how we operate. And this isn't to say that we're a capitalist city, it's to say that we have to function with corporate principles. So my city at $14 billion of taxable value is 7 times the value of Ted Turner. Would you expect Ted Turner to just make all of his decisions off looking at Facebook and seeing who's complaining about something? Of course not. Ted Turner is going to be looking at data, going to be making some analysis of understanding the economics and productivity of different shows. So at this point, we've done this all across the country, Canada, New Zealand, Australia. And these are the basic, simple stats. For every dollar of taxes somebody out in the unincorporated county, single family, is paying in county taxes per acre, their brother and sister in the city is paying about 5 times that to the same county. This is the Walmart, this is the mall, this is a 2-story building. This could be in Durango, Driggs, Idaho, or downtown Durham, North Carolina. Once you start stacking stories 2, 3, and 6 stories, notice how it proportionally jumps up. Highly, highly potent. Now, the opposite is true. We've basically designed a system to incentivize land waste in 1-story cheap buildings. That's it. And to validate this, I actually presented, people are like, you just hate Walmart. I'm like, you're totally missing the point. I presented at the International Association of Tax Assessing Officers Conference, the Assessors Conference. It makes a planning conference feel like Burning Man. This was like the squarest conference I've ever presented at. Imagine 3,000 assessors in one room. This guy gets up and does this amazing presentation on how cheap Walmarts are. And I'm in the back of the room drinking my coffee and thinking to myself, this is brilliant. This guy's getting all of his property taxes lowered in one meeting. If you can prove how cheap your building is, it's going to be low value, right? So the assessors are agnostic. If it's low value, it's low value. Now, I'm trained as an architect, so I'm having a coronary because I'm like, how is he getting away with this? And so I went up to the microphone and I asked him, I said, Mr. Terrell, what's the useful life of one of your buildings? And he honestly shot back 15, 20 years. We designed the building to depreciate as fast as possible. We'll build another building to depreciate it down again. We don't care about the buildings. They're throwaway for us. So think about that for your corporation. It's really simple. We have built a perverse incentive to build junk in our corporations. That's how it works. And as long as you're aware of that, their commitment to you is a lifestyle of a cat. It's 15 years. At least more in the passing of a cat. I'm a dog person. This is a joke. But I'm trying to make the point that this is what's going on with the architecture of our community. And people don't see these incentives. They don't see what's going on because we're often not conscious actors when the policy is created. No one asked us if you wanted to reward good architecture. We just created this system and we're witnessing the manifest of what these policies create. So I would argue that people don't see it because one is the policies are too arcane, Byzantine, or impossible to read, but also it's just not presented in a way that we can see it. So if I can take technology of showing you your brain, right? I can show you your creative thought process in green versus your brainstem activity in blue. I can show you what's going on inside your head. Could we do an economic MRI of your place? So let's go back to my community for a second of Asheville. This is my county. So I've got a big old federal park right here called Mount Mitchell. This is the tallest mountain east of the Mississippi right there. It's a big park. It's non-taxable. So just to be crude about it, doesn't pay me taxes. I don't care about it. Doesn't give me money. This is Mount Pisgah down over here. I've got low value in green, high value in purple. So this big purple splotch right here is the Biltmore estate. That one property is worth $100 million for a house. But to be fair, it's a 180,000 square foot house sitting on 8,000 acres of land. It's like the biggest gas tank, right? So rather than total value, here's value per acre. The map just changed. I'll just show it to you in 3D. So this is our county in productivity. And we didn't even bother labeling downtown. I used to be on the board of directors for our downtown association, and our state legislator called us a cesspool of sin. And seriously, I'm not making this up. And so, being polite Southerners, we're like, maybe he really didn't mean it. And then the senator doubled down and said, well, it's not the good people of Buncombe County. It's just those people in the downtown. That's where the freaks and weirdos are. That's the cesspool. What do you do? I mean, we threw a cesspool party with beer trucks and we all wore water wings. I mean, what can you do? But in his defense, I've got 2 voters out in the county for every 1 voter in the city. So it's actually on us to explain to those folks out there rather than hate on us, because people out here in Fairview, they have no idea what they're paying, what we pay in property taxes. They think they're paying a lot of property taxes because they might know somebody out here in Hickory Nut Gap or something like that. So show them what's going on. Don't just tell people we're worth something. Show them the potency that we're getting out of our downtown and send us a thank you card, because we're all county taxpayers, right? What's also cool about this model, so you see our downtown, look at little downtown Black Mountain. That's like 13,000 people, a little village out in the mountains up there. You can see its little downtown popping up too. So that would be our Silverton, if you will. It's like that other town over the Swananoa Pass. So, when I did this, started doing this stuff a long time ago, everybody's like, well, you're different. You're a different state. It's like, well, all right, well, here's Manchester, New Hampshire. Guess where downtown is? Bozeman, Montana. Guess where downtown is? Brevard, North Carolina. This town is seriously like Mayberry. The mayor is called Mayor Jimmy. He's been mayor for like 30 years. The place hasn't changed much from the postcard, but here's their model. When we showed this to Mayor Jimmy, he's like, well, I can tell where downtown is. We're doing a stormwater analysis. Can you do some of these pictures there for the stormwater? And we're like, sure. So here's their tax model. And then we did the stormwater runoff model. There it is. So downtown is impervious. It's going to have runoff. But guess what? Downtown produces taxes. So we dropped this thing on the tax model like a jello mold, and you can see downtown popping through. So we're mountain people. I mean, you all know you're mountain people too. So we give them a mountain profile of the taxes, and this is the stormwater runoff, and here's the problem. So in downtown, there's a piece of downtown that's doing really well. And then there's a piece of downtown that's just all surface parking lots, not doing great from a tax standpoint, lots of runoff. That's a problem. But when you go out to the Walmart and the strip and out here with the Walmart, the Lowe's, the grocery stores, you see all of this runoff and no taxes. So that should be a different form of stormwater fee out there than what you do in the downtown. And he got his brain around it. He understood it because visually he could put his brain around it. Not all impervious surface is created equal. A building is impervious surface. and should pay, but it pays taxes. Parking doesn't pay hardly any taxes. So why are you charging the same impervious surface fee? So just be more geospecific with your tax system or with your fees that you charge, and be more fair. And you'll get a different landscape, a different built environment because of it. So back to y'all. I think we did you in 2016. I presented there, but it was 2015 data. We'll just walk through what I presented back then, because I know it's been a while. But here's your county in total value or miles per tank, and you can see the resorts popping up on the way north for y'all. But here's per acre, and here it is in 3D. So Durango is crushing it in La Plata County as basically the economic nuclear explosion going on right there. When you get into the city, here's total value, and again on the south side you can see the large parcels by the highway and over by the hospital, but per acre it changes, and here it is in 3D with the city, and here's the south side strip down here. Your downtown's phenomenal. I know that you've probably added some stuff and added some buildings, so it'd be nice to update this, but this is where you were at back then. Running through some other diagnostics, your county is 62% non-taxable, which is kind of common for the Rockies, but it's huge amount of non-taxable real estate. Even in the city, you're 55% non-taxable real estate. And I'll come back to this in near the end of the presentation, but this is an opportunity for you all to have a conversation about that. And this isn't to say go out and develop all the public land, but realize this is a portfolio. And then in your downtown, you're looking at 30%. As a county seats tend to have high non-taxable, and also because you are the big city in the entire county, you're going to see a higher portion, but that is kind of high at 30%. But again, this is an opportunity. So as a productivity amount, your city takes up about 1% of the surface area of your county. It's producing about 30, or back then was producing 35% of the county's property taxes. That's a 1 to 35 ratio of productivity. That's really strong as a performer for your county taxes. So for folks in La Plata County, it's like it would be helpful to work with the city, because you're going to garner more wealth out of the county, out of the city as well, and you don't have to pay for any of the infrastructure. The other thing that's kind of phenomenal, again, this is all back 2015 data. The city's producing 76% of the county's retail sales, which was insane amount of retail growth. But as you all know, there's not a whole lot once you leave the city out into the county. Now your downtown is 1.6% of the city's area, 11% of the city's potency. So that's a 1 to 7 ratio. That's really healthy. You're probably, I would probably peg you to be like 1 to 9, maybe 1 to 12 now, with where your downtown growth has been. But back then you were producing 37% of the city's retail sales were coming out of your downtown. Again, super strong. But let's not forget that your downtown is also a piece of the county. So barely shows up as the county's footprint. It's about, was that 1/100th of a percent? 4% of the property taxes to the county. That's a 1 to 400 ratio of productivity. Also, your downtown is producing 28% of the county's retail taxes. So the lesson here for me is what's good for downtown is great for the city, but it's unbelievable for the county, because the county doesn't have to pay for a dog park downtown. The county doesn't fix the sidewalks. The city's doing all of that. You know, when the police are called, the county sheriff doesn't show up, the police shows up. So it really behooves the county and the city to work together to continue to enhance your downtown and grow its wealth, because it's going to be good for everybody. I call this a ski slope. This is our bar chart. This is basically pulling some properties off your map and making a chart out of it. But here's residential single family. Again, this is all 2015 data. And this is the value per acre of the single family, the mall, Home Depot, city single family. So city single family is about more than double county single family. Here's the Walmart, Town Plaza Mall. City multifamily is crushing it, very potent. And then this is where you get into the downtown, is it the average? And so mixed use is green. The downtown average is averaging 9,000 an acre. The core, the historic core of your downtown's pulling, a little over 2 times that. And then you have some buildings that are really crushing it, like this one at $65,000 an acre of tax value. And this one, just a little 3-story building coming in at 61,000. And again, old data, but still the relevance is still true. 6/10 of an acre, 60% of an acre of this building here on the right would equal the 10-acre Home Depot. If you had 1/3 of an acre of this building, it would equal the 13-acre Walmart. If you had 4/10 of an acre, not even half an acre of that stuff would equal the 13-acre Walmart. So this is the potency of these dense buildings downtown, highly, highly potent, but also recognize your history. Your great grandparents left you an incredible legacy that has paid you in spades over time. So, this building's been sitting around for 100 years, and if you had 1.5 acres of that hotel, it would equal the 19-acre mall. I don't think the mall has gotten better since I was there in 2015. It's probably gotten worse, but these are old numbers, but you can see the potency of that. And the spa, I don't even know if it's still a spa anymore, but this little 2-story building, if you had half an acre of it, it would equal the 19-acre mall. So that's the potency of these higher density infill buildings, and also the economic garden of your downtown. It's really, really incredibly potent. And you all have done a spectacular job cultivating that. So stepping out into retail sales are super important in Colorado. You all know that. This is a chart of just different states and how they operate. Red is property tax. Colorado cities are highly dependent on the retail tax. Counties get the majority of the property tax. As you move left on this chart to states in the Northeast, they tend to run mostly off property taxes. There's states that we've worked in: Arkansas, Alabama, Louisiana. They pretty much run the whole show off retail taxes, which is not great because in a recession, no one's buying the TV or the boat anymore. So you run out of money. Not good to run a city that way. But anyway, this is a chart of of Durango's property taxes done as districts, because with retail taxes, we're not at liberty to show individual businesses unless they share their books with us. But here's South Durango, downtown, North Durango is districts. Property taxes, and here's retail taxes. So again, 2015 data, but downtown was crushing it in retail tax production compared to South Durango. Now, mind you, South Durango, other than the hospital, South Durango is pretty much monolithically retail, yet it's not even keeping up with downtown. And it's because of the potency of downtown. And also it's because there's just less wasted real estate with all the surface parking lots that are in South Durango. This is total productivity of adding property taxes and retail taxes together. Any way you look at this and slice it, jobs, you got a lot of jobs downtown, highly potent. And the other thing that we were talking about back then is we had just come out of a recession. So we layered like a geological form. Downtown's this top layer, Central Durango is the beige layer, North Durango is the teal layer, and then South Durango is the blue layer. And you can see how sales rose up, and then everybody kind of took a hit in the recession. Everybody took a little dip here. But what was interesting is downtown Durango before the recession was about 86% of South Durango in retail sales. Then after the recession, downtown grew, and you could tell because the arrow is bigger. But downtown grew to be 91% of South Durango sales. And what kind of made me speechless was once we're like, well, maybe downtown's adding more square footage. Maybe y'all are really good at adding new buildings downtown, and South Durango is kind of like dead in the water. But South Durango was adding 300,000 square feet of retail square footage, and downtown only added 17,000. So in that, it's like downtown square foot of retail sales is like on steroids. And this is before marijuana legalization, before a lot of what you've seen in the last 5 years of transactions in your downtown. So you're probably doing way better than this now. And also a big kudos to Tim and Peter, because they wanted a apples to apples comparison of their businesses to the Walmart. So these are old pictures of the guys. But we had land consumed of Walmart. We actually used Walmart's annual reporting rather than, because we'd have to ask them permission to show the Durango sales. But this is the average Walmart. This is their property taxes, however. This is public information. But who would have thought that Tim and Peter are 15 times the retail or the property tax production of a Walmart? You know, but they are, or were at the time. 7 times the retail sales of the coffee shop in the bookstore versus Walmart. That's the data. And then jobs. Now, when I look at this, there's a bunch of stories that come out in my head. One is I've got 2 local entrepreneurs producing more local wealth on this slide. I also have another question to ask you all. Who's paying the retail sector employee more per hour? The blue side or the gray side? It's probably going to be Tim and Peter. It may be a nickel or dime more, but it's going to be more because local businesses, they tend to know the employees and they're going to pay them a little bit more. Now let's ask the next question. Who's hiring the local website designer, the local attorney, the local ad executive, the local accountant, the right side or the left side? So if we're not paying attention to this, now, and again, you all do it. You have local first, you talk about this stuff, you have these conversations, you understand that you have to build community wealth, and this is how you do it. This isn't to blame Walmart. This is to point out, don't hate the player, hate the game, and learn from it. And that's what I've learned from you all in this analysis. And again, we tend to see this stuff on the left and think that it's market driven, and it's not market driven. It's we've set up policies to make it harder to do the stuff that Tim and Peter are doing on Main Street and easier to do the stuff at the edge. So when we don't have money for the greenway or the art teacher or the dancing traffic cop, I don't think you guys have dancing traffic cops yet. It's not that you don't have the money, it's that you've invested in other forms of infrastructure that are draining you down. Now, since we've worked with you all, we've done a lot of different places, and there's a lot of different people that give us their biases. We're in Lancaster, California. They told us they had plenty of money, but they started knowing something was up. Lancaster is up and over the mountain from Los Angeles. 166,000 people. It's kind of at the edge of the desert up here. But here's their community. They have one building that's over 3 stories tall in their downtown. I think you can spot it in the model. Everything else is pretty horizontal and flat. One of the things that really blew my mind is how many miles of roads they have. They have 953 miles of roads. City after city I talk with, the other thing I hear people say is like, oh, the developers gave us free roads. It's like, no, they're liabilities forever. So 953 miles of roads is enough roads to go from Los Angeles to Portland. Did y'all know that? So every 50 years, they have to rebuild a road from Los Angeles to Portland. Now let's change the question. What if we went back in time, let's say 50 years ago, and said to the community, do you want to build a road to Portland? Would they choose to do that? No. Yet in cities, we do this. We just allow ourselves to accrete, to just keep growing, and we never look at it. The other thing is, inside our budgets, our finance standards list roads as assets. I was talking with a finance officer, her name is Lori, and I was like, Lori, look, my computer's an asset in my business. If I had a delivery vehicle, that's an asset. Or if I had real estate, like a bookstore or something like that, that's an asset. I can sell the computer, the truck, and the real estate. Can you pick your roads up and sell them to Baton Rouge? And she goes, no. And I'm like, well, that's a liability now. She goes, but our standards. I'm like, no, you're not. This isn't the way the real estate works. So in real estate world, if I own this asset, this mall, I know that I have to replace the air conditioners from time to time. Those air conditioners are not cheap. They cost me $85,000 a pop, and I need another $35,000 for the sky crane and the crew. That's the way the world operates. So every 15 to 20 years, I need to somehow find $205,000. And in real estate, you don't find it. You have to grow it. So you have to reserve some rent to be able to pay that future cost. Cities need to think this way, because what we end up doing is we end up keep on bonding these things out. So imagine you've paid off your mortgage and then all of a sudden you have to buy down another mortgage just to stay in your house. Like, how silly is that? That's showing you that you can't afford your house. So here's all of their roads. Here's when they were built. You can see that they didn't have a whole heck of a lot of roads in the early 1900s. And then after World War II, they got a little batty. But look at 1953 with all the lane miles they built in this one year. That's a lot of lane miles. And guess what? 50 years after they built all of that, that comes back to haunt them in 1983. Now, when their parents were, or when the kids were on city council in 1983, did they have any memory of what the parents did? No. All of a sudden they're hit with this huge capital expense and they're like, well, we need more money. In most communities, what they do is they annex more land, they let out more development, and guess what? They take down more roads, right? So this comes back for a second rebuild, and it brings along with it the new stuff. So we stopped them in 2016 and we're like, we just want you to understand what your build rebuild cycle looks like with your roads. This is how you're cash flowing. And so what we can do is we can look back in time and see what happened post World War II. Y'all can look at any economic and city planning literature you want from the 1950s. You will not find, if you can, I'll give you $100. You will not find anybody talking about the future replacement costs of suburban development. They just went ahead and just said, we're going to be different. And then in the 1980s, we were convinced this is how Americans are. This is what we got to do. And we doubled down on that first experiment. So here we are. And again, remember, we're not adding any more roads. And you can see in our generation, in the next generation, you see this compounding effect of roads. I'm not adding in inflation. I'm not adding in the fact that we're dealing with fossil fuels that are becoming extinct. I'm not changing any of the economics of this. This is just showing you the capitalization effect of carrying costs of roads. Cities across the country are dealing with this. So flushing their money into their pipes, into their roads, if you will, and showing where they run out of money. We just gave them a diagram to show them they can only afford 50% of their roads. So as we look about around our community and we're just like, well, we can't afford a fire station. We can't afford a police station. Well, we can't afford it because we've kind of bought down a lot of infrastructure that we shouldn't have owned in the first place. So there's a reason why cities are having a hard time with their economics. We've had this attitude of somebody in the future is going to solve this problem. Well, the future is here. So I understand this is depressing. There are ways out of this. This is a model we did in Eugene, Oregon. This is their revenue model. This is floating their whole city in a lake. And what you can see above the water line is their revenue. What's below the water line, if you can see my cursor. So you live out here is where this is what you pay in taxes. This is what you cost. It's that simple. So if you net your costs against your revenue, this is what's net positive in black and what's net negative in red. So this is the top view of Eugene. You can see their downtown is doing spectacularly well. And if you lift this thing up like you're looking for a salamander under a rock or something like that, this is the spread of the costs and subsidy in the model. So this is the economic consequences of suburban sprawl. Now, this isn't to vilify suburbia. This is to show this is how your cash flow operates because it's geospatial, it's spatial. Okay, I know this joke only works for people over the age of 35, but it is spatial analysis. So anyway, I'm moving on. One of the things that we made for the Eugene folks is this slide. We call it the Brady Bunch slide. And we've got the top row is residential, low density, medium density, high density. They wanted like key indicator species of their community. Mixed use, low, medium, and high, commercial, low, medium, and high. And this is the net position that they're in from a tax standpoint. So what you find is single family detached housing is subsidized to the tune of $1,400 an acre in their community. So you'd sort of be stupid not to choose that building type because you're getting a subsidy out of it. And also, let's be real about the politics. People want that housing type, which is fine. I want to be 6 foot tall and have a full head of hair. That'd make me happy. But there's a cost to that, right? So when you have 80% of your housing in subsidy, it's not a recipe for success financially. So again, this isn't to say stop doing it. It's just to write this stuff down and understand the cost and consequences. So for them, it was like, all right, start doing things that are more economically positive and prioritize that. So definitely do some stuff downtown. But If you look up here on the north side of town, there's this little thing called Crescent Village. That's some new urbanism. And you can see how it's like popping up like a little foothill. So maybe as part of their comprehensive plan, they should prioritize 4 spots to grow that up. Maybe find ways to grow wealth in those areas. And that's what we recommended there. So one of the things that I'm trying to build into this presentation is to understand that you are a form of cooperative development. As a municipality, it's not I'm the government and that's development. You are a development actor when you put a road into it. You have real estate. You have all this real estate downtown at 30%. There's this conversation going on with an INR property. That is a non-taxable property. But you could just look around and you can see, well, there's the Carnegie building right across the street. Why isn't that part of this conversation? Or what happened with the Smiley Building? That was a former non-taxable building that's now taxable. This isn't to say like go off and sell the 9R building, but understand that you've already figured out the brain damage of how to convert a public building into something else. That's incredible. So looking at some of the numbers on this, the other thing is little shift here for a second. We worked in Salt Lake County where they're taking this idea and putting it on steroids. So you all are starting this conversation, but you actually are further ahead than they are. Salt Lake County had a strong mayor. His name is Ben McAdams. Utah is one of the few places where they have strong mayors in their counties. He had seen this guy, Dog Detter. Dog is an absolute hoot. He's the Minister of Industry for Sweden. In America, Dog would be Bernie Sanders. In Sweden, he's like Ronald Reagan. He's an absolute hoot. He wrote this book called The Public Wealth of Cities. And I was talking with him. He's like, you Americans, you should understand money. He's like, in Amsterdam, when we have an old hospital, we don't sell the old hospital. We give it to a developer as a rent. And the developer pays us an income stream and converts it to a hotel. And we don't care. We'll get the hospital back in the future, but we can collect rent off this. And we use that rent for artist housing or for affordable housing or something. We build public wealth off our assets. Or this is a port in Germany. And rather than just sell off the port, they did this design for 40,000 jobs, 5,000 housing units. And they basically leveraged 3 billion euros to draw down and in 10 billion of cooperative development. They basically made an asset off an asset. And taking it to the next level is Copenhagen, where they're doing this entire green village that's all like an eco district. And here's what's crazy. The development contracts include municipal profit sharing, where the government's like, it's our land, we're going to develop with you, but we're a partner. So we want some profits too. I mean, that's pretty awesome. So why not? And this is Utah thinking of this. So we ran the numbers on the whole county, trying to give them some idea of what they could do. This is looking at like the low-hanging fruit. This is their public owned land adjacent to a 5-minute walk from train stations, 3% of the land area, purchasing 11% of the value of the county. That's a 1-to-4 ratio of productivity. We're like, start there. So here's all the publicly owned land from downtown Salt Lake City. And you can see all the different cities here. So the county is doing this so that all the cities could see the value of all this, and they're going to have to do the work. The county is going to yield some benefit from that win-win situation. But we're not going to redevelop the whole University of Utah, but even though it's like walkable to the transit station, you can't find pieces of real estate. So maybe throw some of these things into the kitty. And this isn't a huge amount of real estate, but even when you add it up, it's the opportunity for 40,000 jobs, housing 58,000 people, but it's going to produce, and again, we were way conservative. We put in some affordable housing, some artist incubation space, business incubation space. We discounted this thing heavily, and it's still going to produce $13.5 billion worth of value off land that's currently giving them nothing. I'll give you an example. This is a utility yard that's literally 1,000 feet away from a train station. And we're just like, look, you can tell what a developer is clearly already building in the area right there. What if you just rubber stamp that thing in there? That's going to get you 82 million. Do you really need to keep your utility trucks in this location? Find a better spot for them. This one we did as a joke. This is the temple right here. And there's a train line that goes this way and then heads north to the airport. And this developer did this huge mixed use development. Right across the street is a 30-acre high school in the downtown. And just for fun, we're like, Well, you could take this stuff and here's an opportunity, the surface lot here. And what if you built a indoor football stadium and put the running track on the roof? You could build in this parking lot, you could build on in the field. Let's just go hog wild. That would produce $406 million. That we had no idea that Mayor McAdams, his reaction, he was like, oh, this is great. I want to talk to the school about this. And we were like, okay, that's cool. Just doing that one development would produce 2% of all property taxes that are going to the entire school system off one development. You will get $2.5 million in taxes just off that one project. You could actually fund the entire high school off this development, keep the high school. Okay, I understand that's like maybe extreme, but we're like, can we just at least look at this driver's education course that's on the campus? Seriously, do you need to have bus storage and driver's education course right across the street from a development? That would yield about $30 million of development. That's your opportunity. The flip side of this, you have opportunity, you have cost. Let's just tell the community, what does it cost us to maintain that surface lot and keep it off development? What it costs is $128,000 of parking space. You could actually build 3 levels of underground parking. One of those levels could be a driver's education course and would be cheaper than what they're doing today. When we make public decisions, we need to understand the costs and consequences of the opportunities that we forego just because we're doing an easy decision to make a driver's education course across the street from a high school. It's in the middle of the downtown. Why would you do that? So again, this is to stimulate the conversation. When you take all of the real estate in blue, this isn't about building on the mountainsides. It's not about building in the estuaries. It's taking some select parcels. You're still looking at 44 square miles of land. This is the amount of buildings right now in black that are on that land. We just added new buildings in this rust area, 4 square miles of new buildings. That yields $45 billion of new taxable value. So here's the taxable value of the county right now, and they could harvest new wealth of 45 billion. Now, what's happened since this project is the mayor did his job. He did an amazing investment to the community. The city of Salt Lake is now taking it the next step and coming up with a way of acting on this. So they're developing, they're just starting, they've got the map of their assets, and now they're going to send all of those assets into city council and the politicians to start filtering them out. What's our tier 1 developments, tier 2, and then whatever's going to happen in the future. Those properties will be then filtered out. They're not going to redevelop City Hall. City Hall is a legacy building. Don't touch it. You've got policy buildings like a firehouse or a police station. Those are different uses that you generally don't want to mix with private sector development. You've got yield properties that you could just sell. You also have hybrids, properties that could do public and private together. So the stuff that you want to keep, that stays in the Parks Department or the Housing Department or whatever. And then we're calling this other team the Public Asset Yield Team. They're going to hire a Ted Lasso, hire somebody that's like optimistic, that wants to be entrepreneurial and try to find a way to solve problems. This isn't a typical bureaucrat. You want to have somebody that thinks like a developer and an entrepreneur, but on the public's good. So we call them the most optimistic developer ever. But they're going to engage private sector capital. They're going to engage private sector partners. They're going to think creatively, and they're going to create this yield portfolio that's going to spin off revenue and pay for other community programs. It's going to help cover the cost of a park, help pay for the new fire station, whatever. Now their hybrid input, something I'll cover in a second. That's where you're doing both at once. And then eventually the Parks Department may find other properties that they can put back into the bank to go back into the Ted Lasso department. But there's got to be a reporting methodology. So if you find an underutilized park, maybe it gets sent over to Ted's department and he creates a hybrid, puts some houses on the park, still keeps the park, but there's maybe a piece that you could use to garner new money. But anyway, you could think creatively about this to create yield in your community. So legacy assets are things like, City Hall, estuaries, riparian areas. Don't touch them, stay out of them. These are policy assets, like something that's already public housing. It's like it is what it is. Or a library, public safety building, things like that. Although their library, they've got their main library is already a hybrid. It's a library, but it already has bookstores and stuff, coffee shops, things that are already paying rent. So they know how to do this. So think of it this way, look at all of your public goods as opportunity. Your greenway is legacy, your library is policy, this is opportunity on the side lot. So this is the way that you would look at it. And there are real TEDs out there. We worked with this guy, Patrick Sieb in Rochester, Minnesota. The Mayo Clinic, state doesn't want the Mayo Clinic to leave. So the state sends money into Rochester, and the community of Rochester works with Patrick to make sure the Mayo Clinic is happy, because the Mayo Clinic is a huge job generator, and there's people that fly in from all over the world to get treatment. So they want an alive downtown. So every 5 years, Patrick has to make a report about what his investments have done and what the public sector's investment has done. So, or private sector. So am I yielding as a developer? Am I doing the public's good, but am I leveraging other investments? So this is 2015, and here's where they're at now. So we modeled their growth, and he's been able to yield $2.4 million more taxes, a 60% increase in taxes. So again, remember, he's measuring the Mayo Clinic and what their investments were in 2014 and what the private sector, non-Mayo, put in, and how that growth has been over time. In Minnesota, they call it tax capacity, is the tax growth. So it's a 1.4 times growth in taxes and a 2 times growth in value. So again, this is a model that you all could have. So back to you all. Here's the current fire station. Here's where it's being proposed. I took a look at the plan. I'm trained as an architect. I'm not going to ignore this. But this is a tremendous amount of building loss to make this drive-through happen, basically. There is a big building there. I'm not going to say it's architecturally significant, but it's a lot of building it's got material in it. So why would that send that to a landfill? It's got bricks and wood and steel. You're also going to have emergency flow that's going to dump out onto the street that the street currently doesn't have, and backflow that comes in, big trucks coming back up the street that way. That's going to happen as a circulatory system. And you're also wiping out a bunch of trees over here. So I don't know if you all are talking about the adjacency use conflict with those housing that's just like right across the alley there. But that's going to be super loud for those folks. That's going to be an impact that you're going to have to mitigate. So that has to be talked about. It's not just about reoccupying a building. There's other inflictions that come upon it. But this building footprint right there, I couldn't not look at that. That's a huge amount of real estate. These trees are pretty darn mature, and they're apparently all gone in the drawing. So again, cost and consequences. Is this the question you would ask? So looking at these numbers, again, obviously like 25 yards away, you've got this thing. Can you learn from Durango? Can you learn from the Smiley Building? This building's got all of these businesses. I went ahead and counted it. It's 62 businesses. I assumed 1.3 employees per business. That's about 81 employees. I emailed back and forth with Tim. Tim thinks it's closer to 114. I'm cool with that. But 114 employees, think of how many visitors go through there each day. But that's going to yield a payroll of about close to $4 million. So that building's showing you can get that value out of that building. I also ran the taxes on that. This number is wrong, by the way. I don't know why on the property card it's 2,000. It should be 40,000. But it's about $53 a square foot in value, which is yielding about 47,000 in taxes. I'll come back to this in a second because I'm going to apply these numbers to the same building. Let's just Smiley Building this for a second. This building, but again, I know this isn't going to win an architectural award over here, but it's impregnated value as far as I'm concerned. You don't have to rebuild a building. There it sits. But that at one point at about $1.20 a square foot in taxes, this building could yield 53,000. So it's going to yield more taxes than the Smiley Building if you just rent it out. That's per year. So here's the Smiley Building numbers: 39,000 square foot, 114 jobs, payroll taxes, payroll wages, and taxes. This is what the opportunity is. So you can get 127 more jobs. You can get a little over, let's call it 4.2 million in new wages and salaries as an opportunity. And you can get 50,000 more taxes. Incidentally, If you just rented it, I just did $12 a square foot. That's another $500,000 out of that building just to turn around and play landlord and rent it out to $12 a square foot. I don't know if $12 a square foot is high or low in your marketplace, but that's reasonable. That's pretty good. That's what is that, like 1% of your entire budget can come out of this building for your community. And again, this is just a little thought puzzle. I want you to think bigger than this, though. Like, step out and think about all these opportunities in your downtown, in your city. Look at all the portfolio. This isn't to turn it into analysis paralysis and just kind of have an ongoing conversation, because in defense of the police and fire department, they have needs. They acted because they want things done, so work together, move forward together. Think about these opportunities. So now what? One is you can get a TED. You can go out and have that position, somebody that's creative, entrepreneurial thinking, or you can go get a dog if you want. Like, get somebody that's going to be thinking proactively and entrepreneurially about these opportunities. Assess all of your opportunities. Look at all of your land in your downtown, the library, the old Carnegie Library. Could it be treated better than it is? How do you make that happen? Can you learn from yourself? This isn't like you don't know how to do this. It's happened in your community. Do map all of your assets. Do what we did in Salt Lake. Look at them and what could be worked on and where your opportunity is. What can you do with all of these things? And you're going to need to flesh out how to make this happen while you're looking at this portfolio. I was just, for the heck of it, I was trying to think, like, the fire department should be on a more heavily trafficked thoroughfare. I'd want to map where all of their calls are and try to get them on that route rather than having them have to penetrate through a community to get to the route. Looking at the north side of the city, you have, there's like a Rotary Club parking lot up here that's publicly owned. Like, why not there? I don't know. I mean, it's like, there's more questions you can ask, but broaden your vision, get out. And it's not just your city, it's get cooperatively with the county, the school system, all of your public assets. Think about what can and what should and shouldn't be on the table, and talk this through. So to close, our attitude is to be agnostic. We call this geo-accounting. We're going to put your data on the map and take a look at it. Accountants are kind of more like bean counters. Think of it this way: they don't care if you can if you buy a boat, right? Your accountants care if you can afford a boat. So can you really afford to take that building and turn it into a police and fire station? It's a very expensive building to do that too, and it's not going to be comfortable for the police and fire department. And why would you throw away a building that's sitting there? Those are questions to ask. Put this information on a map so people can see it. Don't worry about mistakes. Just try to be positive about it, but also understand that your cash flow of your city and how you operate. This stuff costs money. And it's not just going out and just buying down a building. You need to understand, what are these opportunities that you have. You're actually an awesome community, so go for it. I always close my presentation by recommending Chuck's books, because this is the same thesis in the way that we think about communities. And thanks for letting me do some math with you all. Sorry I went over.
No, that was great. Thank you so much, Joe. Really appreciate your time. I was going to ask, can you stay late, maybe 5 minutes?
I can stay as long as you want. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, folks, we didn't see any questions come in through the chat. I know it's a lot of information, a lot to digest, but if you did have any questions come up, go ahead and put them in now, because we can stay a couple minutes late. But if it's still just kind of sinking in, if you want to just email those to me at director@local-first.org, we can definitely take your questions that way and get them over to Joe.
Surely this crowd's got a question. Here's a question. The analysis I did was, I didn't have an architectural report. I didn't see what's in the buildings. So I wasn't able to do a full diagnostic or any kind of feasibility analysis. It was merely just a kind of back of the envelope. How do you just throw some simple numbers at it to kind of spur a different way of thinking about it? So I was just taking all of the square footage that was on the site and seeing it as an opportunity. I can tell you that from our perspective here in Asheville, we always look at the buildings as start with those first. If they're bones that are built they're amortized and paid for, and you can fix them and move forward a lot cheaper than knocking everything down and starting fresh with a brand new building. So that was kind of the perspective that I took. Yeah, and I think the thing that struck me in listening to all this, my brother's a firefighter. I've worked in government. I've seen the wheels turn slowly. To me, that's one of the things that struck me the hardest, is that that's a pretty phenomenal move to go out and just act this way and buy this building. So hearing a book that I'd recommend, I've just finished, it's called High Conflict by Amanda Ripley. You all are in a conflict position at this point, and it behooves everyone to hear the other side genuinely and with empathy. And also for the police and fire to hear you all as well. I don't think this is, from a design standpoint and a city planning standpoint, this will cause more problems than it solves to try to turn this building into a police and fire station in this location, particularly wiping out an entire building and having that kind of drive through there, and the trees and everything. There's just a lot of damage that's done there. Is there some way to do a cooperative development with the Smiley Building, and this building together? How do you do a shared parking facility or something where you're solving both problems at once? It could be a win-win-win situation where there's parking deficit at Smiley, there could be parking deficit here. I don't know. There's ways to leverage this, but I tend to take an attitude of start with what you've got and how do you make what you've got better, rather than take something down half the building size.
Awesome. Well, I don't see any other questions coming in. So with that, we will go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. And we really hope this was a helpful presentation that kind of encourages all of us to view the opportunities we have in our community a little bit differently and through a new lens. So thank you again, Joe, for being here. Really appreciate all of your perspective on this and you spending some time with us.
Thanks for having me. And I'd like to see you all in person.
I was going to say, I know there's a lot of developers and planners on here, and we would love to bring Joe back and partner with others to do that. So my email is in the chat. It's director@local-first.org, and feel free to follow up with me there, or anybody else from Local First that you work with.
Well, last time I was there, y'all hooked me up with some Olympian and made me go mountain biking with them, which I really enjoyed. But this time I'll be less intimidated.
We can get you one of those e-bikes if you need it, Joe.
Oh no, I'm good. I'm good because he's older. He's older now too, but he's probably still in shape. But
there you go.
Anyway.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much.
Good to see you all.
Have a good rest of the day.
All right, thanks. Bye.